Hello there, and welcome to this episode of the Star Wars Universe podcast. I'm your host, James, and this month I'm pleased to welcome back returning guest and good friend of the podcast, Josh Hoyt. I'm also going to look into what I've done and what you've done over the past month in Star Wars. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode in the future. Now I'm going to pass over to past James and Josh for their chat about what they've been up to recently in Star Wars. And I am pleased to welcome back good friend of the cast, provider of our wonderful giveaway recently, and regular contributor as well. Welcome back, Josh, to the cast. And how are you?
I am doing great. Thank you for having me back. It's been an exciting time, a busy time, but I appreciate being able to come back. And I have greatly enjoyed getting to know you and conversing, back and forth on, I'm not going to call it X, I'm going to call it Twitter, but I've enjoyed our conversations and just sharing some ideas that we've had about a lot of things related to Star Wars. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really one of the reasons why I wanted to start this podcast is to meet other Star Wars fans. We were saying just before we hit record that growing up in the dark times, as it were, where you could only really talk to people if you were face to face with them, and it wasn't exactly cool at the time to be a Star Wars fan. But now it's now we're here and see what comes back. And no, I really appreciate all the time, all the conversations we've had and everything else. And yeah, I'm really pleased to have you back on. So you were on my fourth episode. We're now entering main episode number 11. We've had a couple of specials, both of which you've contributed to as well. Regular contributor via updates as well. But you being here allows me to get into the weeds a little bit more in terms of what you've been up to, and actually have a bit more of a back and forth conversation. So what have you been enjoying about Star Wars since your last main appearance on the cast?
Oh, wow. Since my last main appearance. Well, I've gotten a little bit more into Black Series collection, so was able to get some from the Ahsoka series as well as some of the re-releases that they've put out. I got some of the updated clones, so I have I have Jesse and Rex and Fives, and I was able to complete my collection of the Bad Batch. So I have both sets of the Bad Batch in both their original attire and then their mercenary attire. Big Lego person, so I've been, anytime the new ones come out on August 1st next week, there's a lot that are coming out, looking forward to, but got some of those set, built those with my kids, and really just was excited for the Acolyte and enjoyed watching the Acolyte. And I'm not gonna lie, I probably watch the episode 3 probably once every 2 weeks, whether some portions of it. So I did some updated to my surround sound in the basement and added some speakers, and that's the first thing I put on is that, just to see how does the opening of that movie sound with the thundering bass and the space scene there. And once I put it on, then I have to sit down and just watch more of it. So but yeah, it's been a busy time, but a really fun time. Really enjoyed collecting the 25th anniversary Lego minifigures that are coming out with the different sets, so keeping those together. And I basically reinventoried my entire Lego set, because I do have a lot, which is my one little joy that my wife lets me have. So
I'm right there with you on that one. If I look up from where I'm sat, I have a shelf which is just full of Yodas, and I've got the three main sort of Yoda species. I've managed to sort of bend the rules ever so slightly with my wife, and it's Yoda's species now. So I've got the 2002 Ultimate Collector Series Yoda up there. I've got the Yoda with the lightsaber, and I've also got the child, obviously nice. We now know as Grogu, plus a few of the brickheads, plus multiple Funkos. Some
I
of which
used
are
to be
still
a
in
big,
boxes.
yeah, I used to be a big Funko collector, and then I right before COVID, I got rid of them, and I had every Star Wars one. My first 4 Funkos ever were actually C-3PO, Han Solo, Darth Vader, and R2-D2, and I took them out of the box, and then because they were on clearance in Target, I didn't know what they were, and I thought they were cool things, so I got them. They were like $2 each, and now I want to like punch myself for having taken those out of the box. So then I collected Lego and Marvel ones and kept them in the box, and it got overwhelming. So then I got rid of it, and that was what my down payment for my truck was. So it worked out pretty well.
Well, there's a benefit there in the end, at the very
Yes, there
least.
was.
I love collecting things, but I am not
Mhm.
a true collector. I get them out the box. As I
Yeah.
say, I've got a few in front of me which are still in the box, but that's just because I'm running out of room on my shelf. I
I
need to
think
do a
all
shelf reorganize.
yeah, all my Black series. I know people who aren't listening don't really care, but like all my Black series are over there. You can see on the
Oh
shelf.
yeah.
They're all out of the box. So yeah. Because I like to pose them. I change them every. My staff always laughs at me at work because they'll come in and go, "What did you change?" You know.
Yeah, I must admit, I've only dipped into the Black Series once, and that was for a Yoda, and I haven't taken that out of the box yet. I will do at some point, but there's some extra pieces with it which I don't want to lose. So until I get proper setup done, I'm very much just in the spare room at the moment. I will have a full display going at some point in the hopefully not too distant future.
Mine are here because they're not allowed to be at home.
Excellent. Unfortunately, I pretty much work from home full time now, so it's my stuff is also at work technically.
There you
So.
go. Yes, there you go. Win-win.
Absolutely. So you mentioned that you were very excited for the Acolyte, and that being one of a few recent projects this year. So just wanted to sort of get your thoughts on the projects from this year so far. So we had we'll start off with the Bad Batch season 3. What were your sort of thoughts going into it? Did it meet, exceed, not quite meet those expectations? And what did you think of the finale of the series, not just the season?
Yeah. So the Bad Batch was the series I was the most looking forward to this year because that story, like to me, Star Wars Rebels was my favorite character story arc out of all things Star Wars. And after the Bad Batch season 2 ended, I was like, man, I think I really like these story arcs better. I found season 3 to be a lot of fun. I thought Hemlock was one of the best Star Wars villains. He was very intriguing and very sinister, and I like that he was seemed to be always one step ahead of them. Like I thought that the point for them to finally get to there did take a little bit longer, but I still enjoyed the ride. I was really, really surprised that none of them died. I thought for sure it was going out. It reminded me a lot of what my expectation of if those people who are Marvel fans. It reminded me a lot of my anticipation of that season finale was similar to what the anticipation was for the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 finale. And they both ended in a very similar way where I was like, wow, that's not what I expected, but I really enjoyed it. I honestly, and I think I sent you this message, I truly believe that we are going to see Omega in some sort of live action form in a Rogue Squadron component. Like I believe I thought that was really, really cool. The only part that I was bummed about was that, they definitely were still alive. I wish they all would have been there to say goodbye to Omega, but I understand why they did it because he served like the dad. But I just think it would have been a nice, I don't know, for me, I'm just being selfish to see them all say goodbye to her. But I thought it was a great finale. I wasn't one of those people that wanted to see, Rex and all the clones come in and all that, or Vader come in because it was their story, it was their story. So,
Yeah.
And how that ended, the character story arcs, how they shifted were just like Crosshair. His character arc is truly just a phenomenal character story arc. And he's one of my favorite Star Wars characters now. He's in my top 5 favorite because of that. And I really enjoyed it. It was emotional. I really enjoyed it. And I was sorry to see it end but I appreciate the fact that there was finality to it to a certain degree. I do think that they leave those things out there when they say, if you ever need us, kid, we'll be here. I don't know if we'll ever see him again. If we don't, that's okay, but I'd love to see him again.
So I think just to add on to that in terms of where we might see Omega again, or Omega, and potentially also see the Bad Batch again. So I don't know how closely you follow the comic lines, but the main Star Wars comic line is ending, I think, in November or December with issue number 50. And that is going to lead into Return of the Jedi. And so they have then covered in between A New Hope and Empire and Jedi. And they've said that they're going to a new era. Now, that could mean that they're just going to carry on up post Return of the Jedi, and we're going to start to see some stuff from there. What I personally hope is they go back and they do between episode 1 and 2. We've seen between 2 and 3 quite a lot at this point in time. And we are starting to flesh out quite a lot in between 3 and 4, mainly in live action, a little bit of animation here and there as well. We don't know anything about Anakin's training.
Yeah.
And I think there are some really good stories to be told there. There's a Legends book called Rogue Planet, which sort of gives a glimpse into where Legends went in terms of the new Jedi Order later on. And there was also a book called Outbound Flight as well, which was a precursor to the Thrawn, Heir to the Empire stuff. That, from memory, was about it up until Approaching Storm, which is set directly before episode 2. So Anakin is a teenager by that point, and there's a book called Labyrinth of Evil, which directly leads into episode 3 as well. Brilliant book if you haven't read it, but it is now considered Legends. So there's, even in that 10-year gap, there's only 3 books. So I think they could do that. Or what they could do is, as I say, just carry on after Return of the Jedi with Rangers of the New Republic or Rogue Squadron, whatever it's going to be. That type of thing, building up to that live action sort of showcase, and have Omega and the elements of the Bad Batch in there as well as one of the main characters, almost like a Dr. Aphra type female lead as one of the main characters. So I think they could do a number of different things with that. But yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I really, really hope that they keep giving us those characters. You hit the nail absolutely on the head with Crosshair. I think his arc will go down as one of the great character arcs within the universe. That episode, I think it was in season 2, on the snow planet.
Yeah,
where
he has to shoot, or he shoots the
commander,
the officer. And tries to save it. It was so good,
and it's really emotional. Which a lot of people go, oh, it's a cartoon. How can it be? Like, for starters, go and watch Rebels. You will cry your eyes out in Rebels.
Oh, yeah.
Anyone listening out there, if you want emotional animation, Star Wars is delivering by the bucket load. But there's also, I think, and again, as you say, I understand why they let Hunter be the one to say goodbye. I also will cling on to this until my dying breath that Tech is alive.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if they're going to bring that into a similar sort of time period, expanding out, they can find him again in the future. I think they were very clever to show the goggles, and there was the character who had his helmet knocked off in the main fight at Mount Tantis.
That's what I was going to ask you about. Like, did you feel that was their original plan?
Yeah.
Like, the one thing that I felt about the season was that I felt like there was 2 seasons left, and at some point they were told, nope, you gotta compress it, because there were some things that were skipped around, like when they took maybe too long at certain points, but in other points it really jumped the story. And I just kind of felt, I'm like, wow, it just seemed they were teasing that so much. And then to not have that I don't say I was thrown off, but I just felt like I felt like they went in a different direction at a later time with production.
Yeah, and I think they deliberately left the scene in where you see him put the helmet back on, and he's got the visor like Tech had. There was enough there for me to kind of do the Leonardo DiCaprio point of the screen. And I think that he is there. He's been brainwashed and is going to be an agent for the Empire. And so potentially, maybe we can get some more Asajj Ventress stories. Maybe we can get some more Path stories. And he gets unmasked there, and it's a big, oh my God, it's Tech moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, talking of sort of threads that may have been sort of slightly rushed, the Zillow Beast. That kind of came out of nowhere, and it made perfect sense. It did
And it
make
went away
sense,
pretty fast too.
and it went away pretty fast. But I was just like, this is the coolest beast outside of a rancor in this universe, and like, what are we doing here? Like, we're talking about cloning, we're talking about this, and all the rest of it. Show me more Zillow Beast, please.
The one thing I will say about too is it was, even though it was 3 seasons, it made connections to the prequels, the original, and the sequels. Like,
Yeah,
so it that's what I really found fascinating about it, where it had all those, and the Clone Wars itself too, the animated series. It had ties in to every piece of Star Wars that's out there right now. So
no, absolutely fantastic series. I know season 3 probably didn't live up to season 2 for a lot of people, and I completely get that. I don't think it probably did either, because as you say, it felt like they focused on some stuff more than others, and it felt, I think you've got it spot on in exactly how it felt. It felt like they'd taken 2 seasons and kind of smushed them together because of time more than anything. But I think it finished really strongly. I do think it
yeah, I
finished really
agree.
strongly. It was a big enough finale to be a finale, but also left open that they can come back to the characters if they want to.
Yeah. Going into the finale, I was nervous because I'm like, man, they have a lot. They have a lot to. I'm not one of those people that you need to provide finality for every single thing here. But when I saw before I hit play, when I saw the runtime was like 50 minutes or something, I was like, okay, thank goodness, because the last couple ones were like 28, 32, and I don't harp on that too much, but I just like, man, how are you going to cover all this? But what I will say though is the part that I loved about the finale was how they had the plan, but all those, like, it went to crap. Like, they captured him, they cut off his hand. I was like, holy crap! I'm like, what are they going to do? I'm like, they're either all going to be turned, or they're all going to die. And the way it mapped out was really cool to see. So it was tense. It was very edge of your seat. Like, oh no, holy mackerel! Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, no, really, really, really good series, and yeah, absolutely great that you enjoyed it as well. So the next one I have on recent projects is Tales of the Empire.
I enjoyed this one as well. I liked the Tales of the Jedi better. I hate to rank things. I found that a little stronger, but I always wondered with the Mandalorian, how did we get here? And the character interactions. I loved seeing too that there was more than just the witches, that there was another society there, and that light versus dark. I found that really, really fascinating, because I love when they expand the lore, and I love when they world build, and there's more than just Tatooine. There's more, there's more than Coruscant, and expanding that more, I thought was really interesting, and how her character changed, how the trauma she went through, and how she became who she was. So I enjoyed it. And as far as the other character story, that was always a running question. What happened to her? Where, what ultimately became her decision? And it really begs the question, during that time period, was she interacting with Ahsoka? Did those things get mended? And was she another Fulcrum? Was she that? You don't know. And they leave those questions out there. Is she even still alive? You're not sure, but really interesting to see the whole Inquisitor, how those Inquisitors were developed and the choices they had to make. I anything that Star Wars is out there, I hate to be like the super, Homer fan. I love it. I can critique things, but I love the fact that they are filling in the gaps with some of these stories, that they know the questions that fans are asking. Like, what are some of those looming questions? And they're figuring out creative ways to try and answer them. I actually wish this would have come out either right after season 1 of Mandalorian, or, close to that, because I don't think her character in The Mandalorian was as well developed as it could have been, and this fills in a lot of those questions. So, but hey, listen, this is the same thing that happened with the Clone Wars animated series. It filled in a lot of things with Attack. It made me appreciate and like Attack of the Clones. I always loved Episode 3, but it made me appreciate it that much more watching it. So,
yeah, absolutely. I think proximity to Mando season 3 is probably it probably would have, if it had been any earlier than that, or sort of just after season.
I meant season 3, not season 1. Yeah, I meant season 3. Yeah.
Okay, I was going to say, because any earlier than that, it would have been, it would have taken away the surprise of the night element. But no, I completely agree with you on it now being season 3. I really enjoyed Tales of the Empire. I definitely preferred Tales of the Jedi more. I think that was 6 episodes. I really enjoyed every single one. Being the species that I love, the Yaddle episode. I both loved and hated it. But again, it's that thing of Yaddle was in episode 1. She wasn't in episode 2. What happened?
Yeah. What happened? Exactly.
And it's those little questions that are being picked up on. And as you say, what happened to Barriss Offee? Was she, because it's kind of just assumed of, she was probably just taken out in the purge. Whereas in actual fact, she wasn't. She was trained as an Inquisitor. I don't know if I wanted her to have a redemption arc. Some characters, no reason, but just some characters just shouldn't have it, so that when people do have it, it's that much more impactful.
Yeah.
If everyone who falls then gets redeemed, then
it takes the emotionality out of it.
It takes the emotion, it takes the surprise out of it as well.
It becomes a trope too. It becomes an expectation. Oh, I know how this is going to go. Yeah.
Yeah. Saying that, they handled it very well. They built up tension in a very short space of time. They made me care. And that was the job of it. It did make me care. I just didn't care about those 3 episodes as I did about the Morgan Elsbeth episodes, mainly because we got Thrawn and Pelion.
And Rook
again, another appearance of Rook. So I've got so much personal history with Thrawn and his appearances throughout Star Wars, whether that be canon or Legends. So anything is always going to push that up my list of preference. Anything with Thrawn in it.
The Star Wars set coming out next week is going to have Thrawn in it. So yeah,
absolutely. But yeah, I did really enjoy the season. Not as much as Jedi, but I do think it was still a very solid addition. And as I say, I didn't get everything I wanted out of that Barriss Offee arc, but I got certainly enough out of it to enjoy it. And I am very, very pleased that people out there did get everything they wanted out of it. I know that.
What do you think they're going to do next? Do you think they're going to do Tales of the Droids, or because they sort of did that somewhat, and I remember they kind of did a little bit with Lego. They did Tales. I think it was Lego. If not, I remember that being somewhat of a very small scale story.
So I was having a poke around the internet earlier about upcoming stuff. And apparently there was a Droids animated show greenlit back in 2020, which is still on the slate.
That's where it was. Yes,
centering around R2 and 3PO. Yes, but they're also going to bring in another character, which is sort of being hailed as a new fan favorite sort of thing, akin to BB-8 and Dio from Rise of Skywalker. I love that droid. And BD1 from the
BD1 I really love. Yes,
yeah, from the Jedi games. He's a firm favorite at this point in time as well, I would say. So I think they might do Tales of the Bounty Hunters.
Oh, okay, that's a great idea.
So they're kind of the big 3 groups outside of doing Tales of the Sith and diving into maybe some older stuff, maybe some Old Republic, or very much centered around Palpatine and Vader and maybe Vader's castle and stuff like that. But they've covered quite a lot of that in the comics at this point in time, so it would be more of an adaptation if they were to go Palpatine and Vader. I'd like to see some more about Dooku's training. Mm-hmm. He obviously trained with Palpatine for 10 years before episode 2, and then obviously another 3 years during the Clone Wars. Maybe the Sifo-Dyas stuff, we could actually get a true representation of what that was. But going Tales of the Bounty Hunter, you could also kind of include that if you did it around Django as one of the stories. And I think a fan favorite would be Cad Bane as throwing out 2 very popular bounty hunters, although saying that Django has just had a 4-issue comic book series set just before episode 1. So yeah, just before he's enlisted by Dooku for the clone army. So there's potential of, it could be Aura Singh, it could be Bosk, it could be anyone, anywhere. It could be an IG, it could be Zuckuss and the other one, Forlom.
Oh, you're way better than I am. That's
I'm just listing the ones that are on in Empire now. to be honest, a lot of my knowledge is fresh in my mind because of the latest Star Wars Unlimited set is Shadows of the Galaxy, so it's very bounty hunter heavy. But you could also get something about the Hutts in there as well, and the
That's what I
crime
was thinking. Like
syndicates.
Tales of the Smugglers was something like you could do.
Ta-
Never did a
Tales,
solo movie, but you have a lot of like Lando. You have different ones who are out there, and that's where you could also partially include like Boba Fett or other bounty hunters. You have a bounty hunter versus a smuggler, and what that looks like.
Yeah.
I think that's the new video game that's coming out. I think is going to tie a lot into that. I'm looking forward to that.
That should be good. Yeah. But yeah, I think they can go any which way they want to with it, really. If they're going to keep it as broad as groups, they could go back for a proper season 2 of Tales of the Jedi. They could go back and do a proper season 2 of Tales of the Empire. There's enough characters out there. Like let's see how Admiral Piet
I'd love to
came up.
see Yoda with Dooku when he was. I would. I mean, now that hopefully they're going to answer it going into the Acolyte. But if you did like a Yoda with Dooku, and then you did Darth Plagueis with a young Palpatine, I would love to see that.
That could be a really cool telling. They have told quite a bit of Dooku's story through the books. So there's a book called, is it Jedi Lost or Dooku Lost or something like that?
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
And that's an audio drama, and that's really good. That's really good. I'd really recommend that if you ever are on a car ride for a length of time on your own. It's a really, really good listen.
Yeah, getting into the books is on my to-do list because that's just something like I think I had mentioned to you had talked about the one that was a lot with Qui-Gon. It was in there, and the Force, the Living Force.
The Living Force, yeah.
It was on sale at Target after you had mentioned that, and I picked that up. So that's on my summer read because you said there was a lot of great information in there. Because I'm openly honest. For me, like I've started to get into the comics a little bit. It was just something that I never really did because, at the time of growing up, my parents didn't have a lot of money, so I didn't really get into the Legends books. And I've started to collect them now, and I'm 3/4 of the way through the first Throne series, and because I wanted to read that before it got into the Mando Endgame movies.
Are you reading?
I'm in Heir of the Empire right now. I'm 3/4 of the way through Heir of the Empire, so I have that trilogy, and then I have the other Thrawn trilogy to read after that. So
there's a couple of books around Thrawn, either side of that. So Outbound Flight, which I mentioned earlier, is the first introduction timeline wise in Legends, and also is there's a character in there that is also in Heir to the Empire. And then there is the Hand of Thrawn duology, which is really just sort of the fallout of the end of Heir to the Empire. But you then have a book which I would recommend to anyone called Survivor's Quest. That is Outbound Flight. Basically, they're both about Outbound Flight, and they bookend the Heir to the Empire trilogy. Really, really good. Really, really good books, both of them, if you're a Thrawn fan.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
And if you want comic recommendations, where to start, because there's a lot.
I started Paul Herman talked a lot about the Vader run and said that was one of the best like Vader stories. So I have that in my Marvel Unlimited queue to read.
I would second that. Paul really knows his stuff on comics, obviously, and but I would absolutely 100% second that. I would make sure you start at the 2015 Darth Vader run, and just it goes the whole way through.
Yeah,
so you can just read it all through, and it follows sequentially. There's a few random sort of 1, 2, 4 issue runs like Vader Down, things like that, where they're not essential, but once you get into reading Vader, they're amazing. The Vader run is absolutely phenomenal. It's probably the series that got me really back into reading Star Wars comics. So yeah, it's really good, really, really good. But yeah, so the final project is the Acolyte. So overall thoughts? So this is your first foray into the High Republic, isn't it?
Yes. Well, my initial one was playing Jedi, the new Jedi Survivor game, and I was familiar with the characters because I did some research on it and read about it. Didn't read, but read the research about them
Yeah.
just to get some background on it. And I knew who Master Vanestra was, and what had occurred that time period, and I knew that this series was going to kind of be like the fall of it as it started to decline. I thought the lightsaber battles in this series were absolutely phenomenal. I thought it was as close to episode 3 as in my opinion that they've come really with anything. I thought that they were really great. I thought that Quymir was a great. I wish they would have spent more time with him, and I hope that they do that because I found I hate to be that person that said, oh, I figured it out right away, but I was 99% sure he was that individual. I thought Master Soul was such an emotional character, like really just a connection with him. Like he just did a phenomenal job acting in that series. I thought he was just tremendous. And I enjoyed how they brought in different aspects, like the one the one episode where there were, and I'm going to screw up the name, but whatever those beetles were, it put me right back into playing the video game where, like, no matter what I did, I always took damage from them,
Absolutely.
It reminded me of that. I thought that was really neat. Kelnaka kind of surprised me with how they just killed him off screen. I was happy to see the flashback scene where you got to see a Wookiee Jedi in action. Yeah. I always wondered what would that look like because they have to be so physically powerful. And just the different the cortosis aspects that they brought in, I thought that was great because you want to talk about a thing that most people, I don't say most people, but your casual Star Wars fan isn't going to be familiar with something like that. And just how we used his helmet to knock him out. I thought that was really, really great. I will say, like, the sister story didn't fully connect with me, but I liked how there was a turn that she became the Acolyte, and May, you don't know right now what's going to happen. You knew at some point there was going to be a Yoda portion. The fact that it was the last thing, I hope they do season 2. Like they can't end like this and not continue on. The Darth Plagueis cameo, you can't tease those things and say, okay, well, that's the end of it. I thought it got a tremendous amount of negative hate for all of the wrong reasons. And for me, that's the thing that really bums me out with Star Wars, when you just see this type of vitriol and this type of just irresponsible hate towards something that for all the wrong reasons. I will never disagree with somebody when they have an opinion about Star Wars, because Star Wars it's how it relates to you. And if you don't like something, that's great. I'm a die hard Marvel fan. And listen, Thor the Dark World, to this day, I still don't connect with it. But Endgame made me appreciate it more. I'm just really disappointed in the fandom and some of the people that are out there on social media who have a tremendous amount of influence, who just said some really ridiculous and irresponsible and just undoubtedly awful things. It's morally wrong. But that being said, I enjoyed it. I looked forward to it. I missed that it's not on. I think that it brought in some great concepts, gives us an idea. You got to see a vergence of what that meant. And, I had found out that had tied into, I don't know if it was a book or a comic, that the hyperspace accident was mentioned before in some other story. Mm-hmm. So making that connection there, and how you saw this like detective work by the Jedi. I love the Matrix. So seeing Trinity die right away was a
Jedi
bummer.
Master Trinity.
But she came back. I thought the martial arts were phenomenal. I loved seeing, a great combination of really powerful saber skills and lightsaber battles, but also the martial arts. Like the final fight between Quymir and Master Soul, the slow motion scene where they jump out the window, I thought that was magnificent. I thought that was brilliant. Jackie was a great character. I was bummed to see her go, but it makes sense because people got so worked up. Oh, this throws all the canon off now because they're going to know about the Sith, so he lied and blah, blah, blah. And people didn't give it time. Like, people want so much instant gratification on things that they don't appreciate. Let the story tell itself. And it did help to fill in why people wouldn't have known so much about him, because everybody died and her mind got wiped. So, and now what I did like about it was Vernestra was giving her speech to the Senate. She was speaking about herself. Like, you could see her talking that a Jedi went rogue and a Jedi did things to cover up for something. She was there telling, hey, this is me, but I'm projecting it on Soul. So that's where I really, really want to see a season 2. There were things I loved about it. There were some things that I was like, okay. But in the end, I really appreciated it. This is something that I've been craving. Like, what the heck happened before episode 1? Where did these things come from? And I would really love to see what goes on from here, and how does a young Palpatine down the road get involved with Darth Plagueis to set the stage for that. So
Yeah, couldn't agree more with pretty much everything you said. I really liked the little things they did in it. So things like, as you mentioned, the headbutting a lightsaber with a Cortosis helmet. That's always going to be cool. Doesn't matter if you're a Star Wars fan or not. Headbutting a laser sword to turn it off is cool. But then Jackie figuring out this is Cortosis. I know what Cortosis is in universe. I know it's like Beskar, but really brittle. And so I'm going to hit it with the hilt of my lightsaber and crack it, because my lightsaber can't penetrate it, but it will break if I hit it. It's those little nuanced elements added in. I was both devastated and slightly amused when Jackie met her end, because it was one of those, she's not walking that gut shot off. And I know there's been a big meme recently of everyone getting sort of stabbed.
Qui-Gon's like, Qui-Gon's like this. Yeah.
What did I do? And they really made sure Jackie wasn't going to get up. And shake it off. I really didn't get on board with Yord, but again, it wasn't a pleasant scene to watch, but what an ending for him. Brutal, more brutal than I was expecting.
That was the violence surprised me, and which I enjoyed. I mean, when he did the one move where he force pulled the other Jedi into that, I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah. The level of ingenuity with it, and just pushing the boundaries of what a lightsaber fight could look like in live action as well, because it's so much easier to do all this stuff in animation and getting some crazy flips and sequences in there. But to actually see people put the time and the effort into learning this craft is absolutely unreal. And I really enjoyed episode 5 specifically. I thought the opening episode was very Matrix. My brother-in-law actually messaged me. It was about 4 days before the finale, and he's like, I'm just sitting down to watch the Acolyte from the beginning. I'm 10 minutes in, and this is very Matrixy. And I was like, yeah, it is. It stops being quite so much, but yeah, roll with it. There was a lot of speculation about Kylo being Smilo Ren or the Sith who laughs, whatever you want to call him. Both names absolutely made me chuckle endlessly for hours.
My favorite one was the sexy Sith. That was my favorite one.
There was a lot of speculation about him being that character, and then it was revealed, and it was almost to a point where it was so telegraphed. I was like, this has to be a red herring. This has to be someone else, but it wasn't. I really enjoyed it. I am desperate for them to have a season 2. I am desperate for there to be more Yoda, obviously. Desperate for there to be more of the actual Sith, because I still don't know if Kylo is part of the rule of 2 or if he himself was the Acolyte.
Part I struggled with, like, was this a mission he was given by Plagueis to do this as a test for him, or is he truly just a rogue Jedi? And that's, there's these who is in the sense that knows what the Sith are and is just calling himself that, but really, is not a true Sith. I don't know.
He didn't even really call himself that, though, did he? He just sort of went, I guess you would call me a Sith. And so he never actually labeled himself. And that obviously fed speculation of, is he the first Knight of Ren? Which is a way he could go very, very easily. But I think if they were to do a season 2, which I hope they do, I really do, we get more Sith. I think the Jedi, they've got away with it once. You can go to that well only a few times in the 1,000-year period that is mentioned in episode 1. I think Venestra is going to be honest with Yoda, which then feeds into Yoda's line in episode 1 of always 2 there are. How does Yoda know that? Because they've been in hiding since before he was born. But there's also, I liked the fact that the Jedi were already starting to being questioned by the Senate.
Yeah, I wish that character would have been in a little bit more too, because the scene, I can't remember his name, but he was really, he grabbed you. Like he grabbed that scene. And I think if that would have been maybe early on too, I think that might have helped a little bit, because I thought he was great.
David Harewood.
He's a great actor.
He is. He's an absolutely fantastic actor. I was really surprised when he turned up. I wasn't expecting him to be in the episode. I wasn't expecting him to be in the series. It was a really nice surprise to see him. That is one of those Leo moments that worked. Whereas I think some of the cameos we were starting to get in The Mandalorian were a bit like they're shoehorning this in because it's a big name.
Yeah. Like Jack Black.
Yeah, and Lizzo. Yeah, I didn't want to quite call it out that blatantly, but I guess I kind of did. But I think one thing that a lot of people forgot, because a lot of the complaints I saw was that the fact that the Jedi were portrayed in a bad light, and they shouldn't be, because they are keepers of the peace, and it's a good versus evil tale. The one thing that I just kept thinking the whole way through is this is a Star Wars trope. Everything in Star Wars is from a certain point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And we were told very, very early on when this show was announced, this is from the perspective of the Sith or the dark side. So of course they're going to look bad. And Jedi make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
They always have done. They're not infallible beings. Yoda made mistakes. He went into his fight with Palpatine arrogant and got his handed to him. Obi-Wan went into the fight with Anakin not wanting to do it. That was a mistake, and so he held back. He left him alive, plunged the galaxy into 20 years of the Empire, which they would have been able to, it would have been less. They wouldn't have had Vader if he hadn't failed on Mustafar. So the Jedi have always been fallible.
Yeah, I mean, Qui-Gon was told that he couldn't train Anakin, and then it made Obi-Wan define. I agree. Like there's no black and white there. That's why two things I appreciated for it were, one, when the girl's mother made and I'm paraphrasing this, but something to real like, your principles are what are ultimately going to become your destruction. Perfect. And when the senator was speaking, basically saying like, what happens when one of you take your emotion and can't control it? What happens then?
Yeah.
And they're human beings, and there's just, people are just so entrenched on certain things and the way things are said that they get stuck in those beliefs that, well, Jedi can't have attachment, so that's not true, and it ruins this, because it's a belief. But people sometimes go against beliefs, but that doesn't make them bad. It makes them a human being.
Well, and at the same time, it's very hypocritical to take that stance when it suits. Those people who are saying that want legends adapted into canon.
Mm-hmm.
Luke, the greatest Jedi to have ever lived, has a wife and a son.
Mm-hmm.
He has attachments. Anakin, the hero of the Republic during the Clone Wars, had a wife and eventually twins. He loved his R2 unit.
Obi-Wan loves Satine,
Yeah,
so it's all out there. Yep.
Yeah, and that is part of it. That it's a moral story. It's not an absolute. Even the whole don't mourn for the people you've lost, let it go. Be at peace with it. That's a very good bit of advice, because it can chew you up if you let it. Grieving is a process, and you get to a point where you do just accept it, and you live with those feelings, and it's difficult at times. It's part of being human or cognizant. It's part of life, and you can allow that darkness in to chew you up and consume you, or you reach a point through the process where you let it go, and you become at peace with it. Doesn't mean you don't care.
I chuckled after the first episode when people were like, oh my goodness, this is ridiculous. You can't have fire in space because there's no oxygen there, and blah, blah, blah. It was like, it's fiction.
And also, have you seen things like the film Gravity?
Yeah.
The International Space Station blows up and there's fire everywhere.
The Death Star blew up.
The Death Star.
I know.
We were in sync.
Yeah.
And actually, whilst they're right, fire can't exist in space.
Yeah. In our space, though.
Well, but also, it can still happen because there is a propellant. There is a chemical reaction that it will burn as long as it has something to burn.
Yeah.
It's just once that thing is gone, it will go out. So it'll be quick. The nitpicking got extreme. But overall, I thought it was a really good series, and I very much hope that there is a season 2. Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. There needs to be a few wins for Star Wars in the coming months and probably a couple of years for the fandom to sort of get behind a little bit. And I think one of those leads me nicely into my next question, is actually your thoughts on the upcoming projects. Again, same format, but we'll start with it. We'll start with Andor season 2. Do you think that's going to unite the fandom again as much as it can be united on any one thing? And are you looking forward to it?
Definitely. I know you and I have a difference on Andor season 1. I really enjoyed Andor, and now the fact that Ben Mendelsohn signed on, I can't wait for it. I'm really looking forward to that. I enjoyed the suspense of that show. I'm looking forward to seeing how Cassius and K2SO come together. I'm looking to see how more seeds of the rebellion fall into place, and just to see how, what are some of the things that occurred on the inner workings of the Empire too, on that side of things. So that's my most anticipated project, besides the Mando stuff, but that's my most anticipated one that I'm coming out. I can't wait for that one.
Cool. Awesome. So yeah, I think with Andor, it's quite difficult because when I watched it as it was being released, I went, it's fine, it's good, but I'm also acutely aware that we've only seen half the story. This was meant to be a 16 episode season, one and done, and they cut it in half. They cut it in half very well. They left it on a very good cliffhanger, but there is also part of me that's sitting there going, we're at episode 4 of The Acolyte. We're halfway. Episode 5 is still to come.
Yep.
And that, I want to love it. I don't like Cassian Andor. I never have done, which is frustrating because I don't like Cassian Andor and I don't like Poe Dameron, which does not make me particularly popular with a lot of Star Wars fans. But I also don't particularly like Han Solo either. So I definitely have a type of character I don't particularly like. I think that comes back to there's too much grey in them. I do like these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. I don't mind that change of view shifting as per story requirements, and I don't mind people shifting sides, but I like to I didn't really want to think about the dirty side of the rebellion, because it was nice to live in the fantasy world that the rebellion is actually the good guys, because there's a lot in the world that can take that perspective and run with it however they want to. And for me, it's a little bit of the blending of real life and a galaxy far, far away, which is not why I watch Star Wars. I watch Star Wars to get away from it and to escape. And so, yeah, I think I probably found it quite uncomfortable to watch because there was a lot of relatable stuff in there. And I'm not talking from personal experience or anything like that. I'm very much just talking about, I watch the news and I know what's going on around the world. It doesn't mean I'm particularly affected by really any of it. I'm not. I'm very lucky in that scenario, but I know a lot of people are. The sympathy and empathy I have for those people is strong, and it's just kind of that crossing that divide that I didn't really want it to cross. Having had a conversation about it, many conversations, in fact, I've actually kind of come around to the point of I actually do quite like Andor. there's a lot of really good moments in it, but as I say, the main character is not one I like. Everything around him was pretty cool, and I love the inner workings of the Empire. That is something I've always been interested in. Speaking of which, I do need to pick up The Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire, the latest book, which is a in-universe kind of history book. It's so it's written by someone with an in-universe perspective, reviewing the rise and the fall of the Galactic Empire, which is a pretty cool concept. But yeah, no. So you mentioned Andor obviously being one of your most anticipated upcoming projects. The other two coming out, which you said might pip it, are Ahsoka season 2 and the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. I'm leaving out the potential Dave Filoni film for now because we don't have a date or really any progress on it that I'm aware of at the moment.
The Mandoverse, I was surprised that they went with a movie because what excites me about that is that movies tend to have much bigger budgets. So, and they're on a higher scale. I do have a lot of fears that Mando is going to die in that movie. I have suspicions that that's going to be the end of his arc, that he'll have to make some great sacrifice or something to do that. But I am really looking forward to how everything's going to tie in, because I do think they have a plan and they know how it's going to end. But it's going to be interesting to see who else is going to be in that movie, because there's been so many connections with Bo-Katan, with Boba Fett, and how is that all really going to play in? What's going to happen with some of the unanswered questions that they have? Are those going to be answered partly in the Ahsoka series, or is that Ahsoka series still going to have its own mission and things would happen after the Mandalorian movie? I have a lot of questions about really what that's going to look like and how it's going to go in. But I'm excited for that, because that fact that, you know, Dave's heavily involved with that, I think he gets it. He's going to make people feel satisfied with whatever conclusion's going to be there.
I don't disagree with you that there is probably going to be a big death in the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. I don't think it'll be Mando, because I think he has a role to play in the Filoni movie. We'll call it Heir to the Empire for argument's sake, because that's essentially what it's going to be. The Thrawn, which is going to be the finale to the Mandoverse. I think to take out the Mandalorian before then would be certainly be a bold move. I think the Mando and Grogu movie will bring a close to the Moff Gideon story, and that will then allow them to shift focus fully to Thrawn from their portion of the galaxy and turn their attention to Dathomir. In terms of Ahsoka season 2, they are recasting Baylan Skoll, which means they have a story to tell and they need him. Looking, obviously, it was fairly obvious with the giant statue of the father. Looking at it, though, it's going to lean heavily into the Mortis arc. I'm trying to think who's Ahsoka and who's stuck on Peridia.
So Ahsoka's there and Sabine.
And Ezra got back.
Yes.
We'll have Ezra in the galaxy far, far away, trying to corral the New Republic that Thrawn is back. And you'll have, which I think will lead to a reunion of the Ghost Crew. I hope we get some sort of voice cameo from Freddie Prinze Jr.
I think they're definitely going to do a flashback of some sort. They're
flashback or a use the Force Luke moment where he just hears Kanan.
Because his voice, correct me if I'm wrong, his voice was in The Rise of Skywalker.
Yes,
he was one of the voices. Yeah.
I don't know if they reused a line from Rebels or if it was recorded fresh for Rise of Skywalker. But yes, he was one of the voices that spoke to Rey in The Rise of Skywalker. And then back on Peridia, you have the Mortis stuff going on, pointing to a cave in the mountains. You've got
because Shin is still on Peridia as well,
with the village, with the scavengers, the rebels, or the bandits, or whatever they are. And she's leading them, or was certainly implying that she was going to try. You've got Ahsoka, who is, to all extents and purposes, the embodiment of the daughter. So we only need a son, and we've got the Mortis gods in people, because I think Baylan Skoll is very much going to take the role of the father in this. Potentially season 2 could deal with Abeloth, and they reseal her and stop her escaping, and that could be the climax of season 2, with sort of our galaxy, the main galaxy, very much a secondary story, leading into the movie. So that's my thoughts on Ahsoka and the Mando movie. But I'm
just
very
curious
excited.
how they're going to get back. I'm curious to know how they're going to get back. You know, if it's the space whales, or I had a theory, and it's probably wrong, that Skeleton Crew, that they're actually in that universe. But you know, I could be I could be wrong about that. He's a Jedi that got lost somehow, and they're from that universe, and they bump into each other, and they figure out a way to bring him back. But I don't know if that may have gotten debunked. I don't know.
It hasn't been debunked that I'm aware of, but it has just made my brain start ticking. Jude Law could be signed on for more than just Skeleton Crew, and he could become the Sun figure.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. We will need to watch this space.
Not jumping ship, but I'm just wondering, like, where does that story fit in? And then how does that story fit in?
Yeah, and best way in the world. There's space in Star Wars for all the stories, all different types of stories. But who out there has been clamoring for Goonies in space?
Yeah, I call it Stranger Things in space.
Or anything like that.
Yep.
We normally tend to get those as animated.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they're building and building and building into this heir to the empire, in air quotes, film, I think they are doing something with this. And so it wouldn't surprise me if it tied in, or it could potentially be something to help set up Rangers of the New Republic or the Rogue Squadron film or other stuff that we have on the slate but doesn't have any traction yet. But I'm excited for Skeleton Crew. I think that's not.
Yeah, I am too.
Not that far away, is it?
No, I think. Is it December that it comes out? Yeah, I thought it was end of 2024 or beginning of 2025 is what it was. I think
it straddles. I think it straddles the two. So it might well be like we had the Bad Batch did that one year, didn't it? Season 2, I think. Skeleton Crew release date just says 2024. We haven't got an exact date, but also we've got Comic-Con coming up.
That I think actually it's going to be announced at D23. If I had to guess, I think so, because D23 tends to focus on the series.
Okay.
Even like with Marvel, I know Comic-Con is going to focus on the movies, and I had heard D23 was then going to talk about the Marvel series. So they'll have a Star Wars panel at D23. Maybe I'm wrong, but I had heard that there's not going to be much at Comic-Con for Star Wars. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I know DC's not really doing much, and I think neither is Star Wars.
See, I heard differently, but I literally heard that today. So I don't know. I heard that Lucasfilm were going to be there, and everyone barred DC were going to be there. Yeah. And they were starting
and
to
Sony's not going to be there either. They're not, which is interesting because you have Craven and Venom coming out soon, and they're not going to be there. So that makes me very nervous.
We need to hear more about the new Spider-Verse film as well, don't we?
Yep.
So D23 looks like it's going to be August 9th, 10th, and 11th.
Yeah, it's not far away. It's only a couple weeks after Comic-Con.
Yeah, we can wait.
And they have a trailer because they showed footage.
At Celebration.
At Celebration that people had seen and described. And there's a Lego set coming out. The ship is coming out with the four young characters and Jude Law's character. So and it's a pretty cool looking ship. It looks like the Knights of Ren ship, but it's got some little tweaks on it. It looks pretty neat. Because the first rumor I had heard about it was that the villain was going to be the pirate, that main pirate that ended up ship was crashing. That they got destroyed in the Mando season 3. I can't remember what the main pirate's name was, but that's who the villain was going to be. Yeah, that's who the villain was going to be. And I was like, like they were going to be, battling the pirates and such. Which what I hoped was that we would finally see Hondo in live action.
I am so desperate for Hondo Ohnaka to show up somewhere, and I'd completely forgotten that he might well show up in Skeleton Crew. It would make sense. It would make sense
if that's what the villain's about. I'm just not sure. I haven't heard a lot about it.
No. Well, no one has. I think we're just gonna need to sit down and wait until see what comes out of Comic-Con and
I'll watch it.
Or D23.
And I'll enjoy it.
It's Star Wars at the end of the day. It's just adding to the tapestry. But no, so they were the main questions. I only have one minor question left to ask you, which is, what have you done in Star Wars in the last month?
Last month, built some Star Wars sets that I hadn't had a chance to finish. And then I also got some of the new ones from the Ahsoka series and built those. I re-inventoried my Lego Star Wars collection and moved some things around. I got a couple new Black Series. I always screw up the number squadron, so I just call them by color. So I got the Mace Window and purple. I think they're 287 or 187, the purple one. I got that dual set. I pre-ordered the Darth Sidious Black Series figure, and as well as the battle droid, and I also got the Droideka, which is a really cool Black Series figure. And then I built that Lego, the bigger Droideka set, which was a fun build. And then, like I said, I told you before we got on the call, I had to rearrange and test my surround sound in the basement. And whenever I do that, episode 3 is what I put on. So I probably watch episode 3 every 2 weeks, parts of it, because my son loves that movie too. So we always watch that. And Marvel Unlimited, I started to tag some comic series. I'm going to start the Vader series and read through that. And I'm about 3/4 of the way through Heir to the Empire. So started to go back to read some of the books because I never really got to do that as a kid.
Awesome. So quite a busy month. It's
yes.
It's which is always good. I love to hear what people are doing, and yeah,
every month in my life involves Star Wars. Every month involves it. So,
but no, it's absolutely awesome that you're sort of starting to get into the comic side of things as well. Depending on how much time you have to read, if you want some recommendations in terms of either 4-issue mini arcs, 10-issue midi series, or
I'll take any recommendations. Yeah, absolutely.
So there's also the 50-issue sort of main runs, which you've got. Star Wars is the main run. It's really good. It is good. If you can, I don't know if you said you got Marvel Unlimited.
Yes.
So you probably best, I use Kindle, so I don't know exactly how Marvel Unlimited works, if you have to do it issue by issue or if you can do it by trade paperback.
Oh, you can jump around to whatever. You can read series by a character, by a story, completely in sequence from this episode to this. So they give you different ways to approach things.
The main Star Wars series is really easy to pick up and put back down per volume, which is roughly every 6 to 8 issues. That's a really good way of doing the main run and just sort of chipping away at it, whilst also then really enjoying all of the other stories around it. So my main focus has been the High Republic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Again, depending on how much time you have to read, the hyperspace disaster that was mentioned in the Acolyte, that is the beginning part of Light of the Jedi, which is the first book of the High Republic. There's another Wookiee Jedi in there as well, called Buriaga, who is possibly one of my favorite characters of all time. And there's a few other books, sort of smaller, they're sort of middle grade novels, but they're decent. They're decently written and they're good stories and stuff, but they're just a bit quicker to get through, centered around Venestra. So if you liked her as a character, I can send you a bit of a list of what she appears in previously, as it were.
Nice.
And
I did purchase it was at Target on sale after you had mentioned it, the Living Force. So that's also in my read.
Yeah, The Living Force by John Jackson Miller is brilliant. It's not that action heavy, but there's enough in it to sort of keep the story ticking along. Mm-hmm. What it does do is it takes the Jedi Council and cuts them up into small groups, which I can't imagine they would ever really find themselves in otherwise. And it's hilarious. There's a lot of comedy in it, and it's very much in terms of how they interact with each other. Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. It's a really, really good book. I listened to it on Audible. I had it's narrated by Mark Thompson, I think, who does a lot of Star Wars books, and that man's voice control is up there with D. Bradley Baker. it's unreal the amount of voices Mark Thompson can do. But yeah, so he's like switching between voices of the different council members. That in itself has a link to the High Republic as well. So they're slowly just sort of weaving the High Republic through various stories throughout sort of the ages within Star Wars. So it's really recommend The Living Force. I'm sure I can offer you some advice on what to read comic wise, as well as Paul can certainly offer you some advice on what to read comic wise. It's great that sort of you're exploring the different other mediums, because I think it is becoming a little bit more important I don't think anything should be so important that it is a must read.
Yeah, you don't want it to be homework.
No. You want it to add to it, and I think reading about Vanestra will really add to her character. I went in with already quite a lot of knowledge about her, and I think I got a lot more than, say, my brother-in-law would have got out of her character, who is very much, he sat down and went, I'm going to watch this now. And yeah, that's very much because I made the decision to go High Republic, new era, good place to get back into it, reading and comics and stuff. And I just went all in, and I'm enjoying it. Very, very good. There's a lot of very cool characters in the High Republic, but there's also a lot of great books around it as well, dotted around the universe and the timeline. So Josh, thank you very, very much for joining me on this episode, and I am going to hand back to future James.
Thanks for having me on, and best wishes to you, and stay safe.
Thank you, Josh, for that update and conversation. I had a really, really good time having that conversation with you, and we got into quite a lot of different tangents there, didn't we? Thank you very much. And if anyone else would like to arrange to have a conversation with me, feel free to contact me either on Twitter at StarWarsUpod or by email starwarsupod@gmail.com. Turning our attention to what I've been up to this last month in Star Wars. Looking at games first, Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. The day-to-day grind continues. I have got round to unlocking Jedi Knight Cal Kestis. I'm currently working on my Gungans, starring them up and leveling them up where possible. I have got the Armourer to 7 stars, the Mandalorian Armourer. Padawan Obi-Wan is now 7 stars. He was recently released into the game, and he was put on a Cantina node, which is very, very good for starring them very quickly. And I'm now turning my attention to working on Jedi Master Qui-Gon, and I believe he is currently 5 stars. And that is going to be working towards the next GL, Galactic Legend, which is going to be Ahsoka Tano. I'm still working on my TIE Echelon. The ships are a very, very slow, tiresome grind, but we keep going. I am now 6 stars on that, and I think I'm about 10 or 12 shards or blueprints for ships out of 100 for that final level. I have been struggling with the game a bit recently. My motivation has dipped. I think it's because I've come off a number of big, long grinds for various characters, and I'm just a bit burnt out, really. As I was feeling really burnt out and actually considering whether I continue with the game at all or not, they announced Galactic Legend Ahsoka Tano, and that pulled me straight back in. So I have been enjoying Morgan Elsbeth and the Night Trooper, which have recently been introduced to the game. They are going to be requirements for the Ahsoka Galactic Legend, and it's reignited a little bit of the passion. I think I'm just going to take it a bit easy, do what I need to do, but not worry too much about it, and just see what happens with it, really. I'm not quitting, but we'll see how we go. Collectibles wise, Shadows of the Galaxy from Star Wars Unlimited is out now, and I was able to pick up 3 pre-release boxes. I also attended an pre-release event, which was great fun, and that was down at CGC in Chichester, and that was a really, really good day. We also a few of us went to the pub afterwards to watch the England game in the Euros, which we won, thankfully, on penalty, so it was quite a tense one. But it was a really, really good day, and if anyone is located in around the Chichester area, then CGC, all your comic book needs, really, really good, guys. And yeah, I picked up 3 pre-release kits from there, and I've picked up since then 1 booster box, 1 2-player starter set, and 24 loose packs, which has meant that I have 29 cards left in the set and a whole load of bulk left over. I also picked up Star Wars Unleashed Battle Pack, which is from 2005, so pre the Star Wars Unleashed games. There was a figurine series, sort of a bit more detailed, a bit more flamboyant figurine series. They initially started off with just large figurines. I think they were 10 or 12 inches. And then they released some battle packs. This one I picked up was the Battle of Kashyyyk, which included Yoda, Ayla Secura, Tarful, and Chewie. And you can get add-ons to that to pad out the clone troopers for Yoda and Ayla Secura, as well as a Wookiee pack as well. That is currently in its pack, nicely stored away, and I am waiting to see where I can display that, if I'm going to take it out of the pack and things like that. If you have any comments or requests for that, if you want to see a pack opening on that and a bit of a product review, let me know. I do all of my Star Wars Unlimited unboxings on YouTube, on the YouTube channel, Star Wars Universe, YOU Universe. And go over there, hit subscribe button, tick the little bell icon, and that will let you know when I upload. Normally I upload weekly, but occasionally I will add the extra bonus episode in if something has happened which is quite significant. So go over there, hit the subscribe button, and tick the little bell icon to get notified. Comics wise, it was a bit of a quiet one for me this month. I have only managed to read Inquisitorius #1 and The High Republic #9. The High Republic #9 is really setting up the finale, the final issue, number 10, coming out this month, and the Inquisitorius #1 is really setting up the story for the coming issues. I can't remember if that's a 4 or a 8 issue book. I'm looking forward to it. I do enjoy the Inquisitorius, and Grand Inquisitor is a firm favourite of mine, and I do quite like Fifth Brother as well. Actually, he's a pretty cool one. Pretty quiet month on the comic book front. I'm going to try and get through some more this coming month, and we'll see how we get on. Book-wise, I have read Rise of the Red Blade, so a bit of an Inquisitor theme this month. What a book. This book was absolutely fantastic. I really, really enjoyed it, start to finish. It starts off at Geonosis, or in the immediate time period before Geonosis, and it goes all the way through to a undetermined time during the Empire's reign. It's an absolutely fantastic book, really, really gripping and really, really enjoyable. Really, really recommend that one. And I've also started Bloodlines, which was recommended to me on Twitter by Hayley Hobbs. I would have loved to have read Brotherhood, which was the recommendation by Meg Dow, but I have already read it, and I would concur that it is also a very, very good book. TV-wise, Acolyte, episodes 6, 7, and 8. You would have heard my thoughts on the Acolyte in my interview with Josh earlier, and just to reiterate, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really, really good series, and the more it sat with me, the more nuance I've picked up out of what's happened, and really enjoyed what they've done with that series, and I really, really hope it gets a second season. In terms of news, I think it would be remiss of me not to mention some of the news which has come out recently, specifically from the San Diego Comic-Con. We have a whole host of Acolyte tie-in books. So we've got a adult, young adult, and a middle grade novel books for them. We've got a few different visual guides and art of books for the Acolyte, the High Republic, and Star Wars Outlaws. We've had a new comic book series, Fear of the Jedi, announced, which is really, really exciting because that's going to tie in very, very nicely with the third phase of the High Republic. We've got a one-shot Karnaka book by Cavan Scott, which I'm very much looking forward to. Cavan Scott is a fantastic storyteller. And we have a new post-Return of the Jedi comic series, the main series, set around the Battle of Jakku. We've also got some new The High Republic Adventures and Edge of Balance, which is the manga part of the High Republic comics coming, and I am expecting some more announcements at D23, so we will keep our eyes peeled in the coming weeks for that, and hopefully some trailers, maybe for Skeleton Crew, maybe a bit more information on the upcoming movies. We will see what happens. And turning our attention to feedback from you guys, I can confirm that I've heard from Hayley Hobbs, who has read Before the Awakening and the Return of the Jedi novelisation, listened to A New Hope, The Princess, the Scoundrel and the Farm Boy, and finished The Acolyte, which she loved. Relatively light month for Hayley this month, but still good to hear that you've still consumed a few books. Todd from the Spark Jedi Council has read Temptation of the Force. He finished The Acolyte. I enjoyed it, but it felt disposable, which is not a good place to be. Started reading The Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire. It is an in-universe academic examination of the Empire and its origins / fall. And he did a Rebel Force Radio Q&A and did Star Wars themed Mad Libs. Brian V. Klein has also not provided us a voice note this month, which is disappointing. I do love hearing his dulcet tones. But he's finished The Acolyte and really enjoyed it. And he's finished Temptation of the Force and got some more merch. He sent me a picture saying, here are the recent acquisitions. of which are 3 Black Series figures, which look like Jedi Master Soul, a droid combo pack, I can't tell what the last one is, apologies Brian, you might have to tell me, and a comic version of The Last Command, finale to the original Heir to the Empire trilogy. So that does it for this month in terms of feedback. So that just leaves me to say a huge thank you to everyone out there, and it would really help if you could hit subscribe or follow or whatever button is called in your podcast app of choice. If you're on the YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button, tick the little bell icon, and if you're listening on audio format, please do drop us a review wherever you listen to your podcast. It really does help the algorithm to get the podcast out there to more people. Thank you again to Josh for his time, and I'll see you in the next one, which will be episode 12, which means that I have been doing this for nearly a full year. So until next time, may the Force be with you, always.